everybody. Welcome to EduMatch. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging in there with us. So we are so happy to have you. And tonight we have an amazing panel, a wonderful episode ahead of us. So definitely excited to jump into this great topic. So follow along with us as you are doing, if you hear my voice right now, podcasts with an s.edumatch.org/tweet talk. You can also go on Twitter and participate in a conversation there, or on our YouTube live page. So it's your choice. You could, and if you're truly multi-talented at multitasking, you can do both. So so you're listening to EduMatch, and you can be the EduMatch person of the day by going to our site, edumatch.org, and clicking the sign up button. And there we can get you connected with a whole bunch of other educators that match your interests. And it's a great way to connect with other people. So tonight's topic is around content creation. So I'm super excited. So thank you to Seth for bringing that topic. And thank you to our fantastic panelists who are going to share their insight with you tonight. So we're just going to kick things off with introductions going from my right to left, which I think for you all looking backwards, it'll be going from left to right. So let's kick things off with Patrick.
Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Harris. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, but currently I teach 5th and 6th grade ELA and social studies at an all-boys school here in Washington, D.C.
Cool. So we are neighbors. So that's awesome. Great to meet you, Patrick, and welcome to EduMatch. Okay. Next up, we have Mandy.
Hey, everybody. I am Mandy Froehlich, Director of Innovation and Technology in Wisconsin.
Welcome back to the panel. All right. And next up, we have Dr. Will.
I'm Dr. Will, host of the Dr. Will Show, where I interview educators and entrepreneurs on leveling up.
Glad to have you back on panel, Dr. Will. Thanks for joining us. All right. And we also have returning to panel, Desiree.
Hello, everyone. My name is Desiree Alexander. I am the founder CEO of EducatorAlexander.com and Educator Alexander Consulting, and I am the regional director of North Louisiana for an educational nonprofit called APAL.
All right, awesome. Great to have you back as always, Desiree. And also returning to panel, we have Crystal Morgan.
Hey everyone, my name is Crystal Morgan. I am a STEAM instructional coach in Dallas, Texas. I work with all grade levels from 6th grade through 12th grade, but I'm housed on a campus with 5,000 students and 300 teachers. So glad to be a part of this.
Well, we are glad to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us again, Crystal. I had the pleasure of seeing you last week when you were here in the DC area. So that was awesome to be able to hang out. All right, great. Next up, we have Bill.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bill Chapman. I'm a retired middle and high school social studies teacher. I started teaching in 1970 and retired in 2007. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, welcome to EduMatch. We are so happy to meet you and to have you on panel. So thank you so much for joining us, Bill. And next up, we have Barbara, who is a trooper, and I'll let her tell you why.
Hi, good morning. Morning on my end. I'm Barbara here, currently in Doha, and Tech Director and Tech Integration Specialist with International Schools. Yes, Sarah, 1 o'clock after 1 in the morning, loving it. 2 more hours. And I'll be at work in the next 3 hours, right? But it's great to be here. Thank you all.
It's great to have you, Barbara. So thank you so much for being here and for burning the midnight oil, pretty much literally, to be here with us. So we are super glad to have you. All right. And last and certainly not least, we're going to turn it over to our amazing moderator, Seth.
Thank you for all of our panelists. It's really cool to see how much engagement we got. I appreciate that. This is going to be exciting. I've been reading up on all these wonderful panelists. We've got a huge diversity of people, huge diversity of content creation. We have people who run websites, people who write books, people who have successful blogs. We have people who are outstanding at tweeting. We have got just, we are going to cross the board with all these different skills and abilities. So I think this is going to be a great intro to how to be a successful content creator and an educator. The way I'm orienting this, I have chosen some fairly basic questions just to kind of give an introduction to how an educator can be a successful online content creator. If anyone is interested in hearing more about the topic and going deeper into it, please let us know either on the Twitter feed or in the comments. if you are interested in hearing about anything more specifically or going in greater depth with this topic. And I'm sure we would be happy to do that. I would certainly be happy to moderate, or we can get some of our other wonderful panelists to maybe take over and get their own stuff. Hint, hint, folks. So if everyone's ready, we're going to start off with question 1. Really general and broad to give it started. What's the one thing you do to make time for content creation? Because educators are busy people. Even if you're a retired educator, I know that can be a pretty busy time as well. So could you guys go through in order and just give us a short idea of what is one thing that you do to create time in your day to make content?
I think that it's so critically important to kind of stay up with the times. I think in terms of content creation, for me, that means making things culturally relevant, but then also just extremely relevant to what's going on in today's world. And so to me, that looks like taking times out to read the news. That means taking time out to explore the things that my students are interested in. And it takes time, for me to listen to the radio and to other podcasts just to figure out what's actually happening in the world. What things are my students absorbing? And then how can I bring that into the classroom?
For me, I'm going to add on to what Patrick's saying. Aside from, just being current, for me, I like to curate in advance. It keeps me organized. So not only am I getting set to prepare and put together what I need for the learners, I like to know in advance, an order of, sites that I'm going to be using, links that I'm going to be using, taking into account their interests, but having it curated so that when I do need it, then I know I have it somewhat all in one place, so I'm not fiddling and looking all over the place, searching for content and information to support that content. It would be curated in advance for me.
Well, what I do to make sure that I have enough time to do that, like how I actually make the time, is I make sure that I try to stay as organized as possible. And I am not a naturally organized person, so it takes a lot of work for me to do that. So for me to make sure that I make the time every week, I actually keep a Trello board ongoing with all of my projects. And then every Sunday, I move the things that have due dates for that week onto my calendar. And from the time that I'm home from work until the time that I would roughly go to bed, I literally schedule every little thing in. And I have 4 kids as well, so I schedule in all of their baseball games that they have going on, even like extra time for driving and things like that. I literally schedule every minute. I have to do that because that's the way that it keeps me organized. And so I think for other people, it's super important just to figure out what system it is that works for you.
I'm really impressed by all of the things that everybody else has said. And the only thing I can think of that I would add is I spend a lot of time trying to stay connected with other educators and set aside time to read what they had to write and to go to conferences and just try and open myself up to as many new ideas as I could possibly gather.
I am one of those naturally organized to a fault people, and it does matter to find your system. So if I get content and it's something that I know I want to look further into, or something that I know I want to use in my own content creation, I make sure I have an email folder and things like that where I put everything that I may want to look at later into that folder and just keep it really organized. And that way, when I do find the time to work on my content creation, I have everything just ready to go. And one thing I found that works best for me is that because we all get super busy and sometimes we put our content creation to the side until we, quote unquote, find time for it, is I make sure to, like she said too, is to schedule it. So if it's on my planner, it has to get done. And that's kind of how my life is. So I make sure to schedule it and realistically schedule the time for it to make sure that something gets created at least every couple of days.
I'm like Nike. I just do it. When you're talking about creating content, you got to be consistent in it, because there's no use of you creating this blog or this podcast and it's dope. And then people go back the next week and there's nothing. And they go back the next week and there's nothing. Then they're not checking for you anymore. So because I want that content to be consistent, I want to build that audience, I just make the time. You know, whenever I reach out to someone and they say, yes, I'll be a guest, I ask them when can they do it, and I get it scheduled, and I do it because for me, it's about making sure that I have the content that I need to build my audience.
Can I just jump in really quick, Doctor, and follow up on that? Would it be fair to just say that essentially what you're saying there is it's got to be a priority? You know, if it's a priority, you know, you might have to shove some other things out of your way if you're going to just do it and be consistent. Is that fair to what you're actually trying to say?
Yes, I mean, it has to be a priority. I mean, especially if I think all educators should be in the content creation game. But if you're saying, I want to do this for, let's say, my brand or elevate my profile, you have to be consistent and make sure that you are putting out a certain type of content on a regular basis, whether that's every week, every 2 weeks, that people know, okay, bam, I'm going to, you know, hit up Barbara's show every week. I know every Wednesday at 8 a.m. in the morning, that podcast coming out, that blog post coming out. And so you just have to, if you're going to do this, you got to make the time to do it and make it a priority to get it done.
I think I'm probably the one person here that makes content based on necessity. My content that I create is curriculum for teachers and what they need based on a conversation we have on an upcoming lesson. I don't have a podcast. I don't have I'm not into trying to get my name out there and market myself. What I'm into is trying to make sure I keep students engaged. So one of the things that I do in order to curate information is I keep my phone with me and I take pictures of everything that seems relevant. And in listening to what the students are talking about and seeing what's happening in the community, and then trying to make the content relevant in whichever subject that I'm supporting at the time and making it engaging. So I'm not necessarily producing anything on a weekly basis. I'm not putting anything out there that the rest of the world is going to see, but I am putting something in a child's hand depending on the content and the subject that the teacher is requesting assistance in. So yeah, curation is very important, making sure you always have a source. If you see something interesting, making sure you document it in some form or fashion. For me, that's just taking a picture of it with my cell phone and then finding a way to connect to what the students are talking about with the real world. That's what I do.
Outstanding, Miss Morgan. Yeah, making sure that you have the stuff there. I appreciate that.
Stay tuned. Edge of Match will be right back.
The Teacher's Journey takes a deeper look at how we grow, learn, and succeed in the world of education. Throughout the book, you'll follow the journey of 7 incredible educators that share their trials and triumphs as they walk along their own journey. The Teacher's Journey will challenge you to reflect on who you are and why you are in education, while providing personal examples and practical tools to use right now. Pairing with the book is the Teacher's Journey podcast. There you can hear great educators as they reflect upon their journey and share the lessons they have learned along the way. You can find more information about the book, the podcast, and lots more by visiting CostelloCorner.com, where you can also sign up for exclusive access to information, graphics, and educational training resources.
Now back to more learning on the Edge of Match podcast.
Wow, we are already getting well into it, and I can already see some tie-ins. It's all linked together. So we'll just go back around with our second question. We'll start with Patrick, and let's try to keep this answer pretty quick because I imagine these things are going to be fairly well shared across educators. But just to kind of affirm what people are dealing with, starting with Patrick. What's the biggest thing that gets in the way of creating content for you?
I might need to hit up Mandy because I really struggle with organization. So like that's one of the things that I struggle with. The things that get in my way is, you know, organizing everything that I have to create to ensure that I'm creating the highest quality product that I can.
Outstanding. Next up, we should hear from Desiree.
I would say time. Just making sure that you have the time to do it, making sure you just do it, like Dr. Will said. So I would just say time.
For me, the biggest thing that gets in my way is I tend to be more creative than my teachers are. Since I am an instructional coach, I try to utilize technology that is current and relevant to the students. And with my teachers having limited exposure to new resources, integrating technology into the English, the science, the CTE courses is a difficult transition for the teacher. So my biggest obstacle is getting buy-in from the teacher to allow the students to use it, because the students already know how to use it. So that's mine.
Okay, cool. Next up, let's go to Barb.
For me, it's definitely the same. It would be balancing time and making the time to actually curate information, getting the information out there, taking into consideration the learners' personalization and their needs. And where I am currently, having to factor time and the needs of the learners, especially with a predominantly EAL group that I'm working with here in the Middle East, getting the time to curate the information and getting it organized for this information and personalizing it for them is essential, and the biggest hurdle for me, for them.
Outstanding. Next up would be Mandy on my order.
I would say that time is number one. And also, I have absolutely mastered the art of procrastination. So I fight that pretty hard every time something comes around, trying to just make sure I'm getting things done on time and scheduling them. So I actually do get them done.
Next up, to the doctor.
For me, it's keeping it fresh. I shoot so many podcast episodes that at some point it's like, okay, I need a break. I need a break. I'm just chugging along. Like, even this month, my goal is to shoot 24 episodes so I can, completely don't do anything for the summer, and I'll still be able to release 8 episodes a month. So I just, try to keep it fresh so mentally I'm still engaged.
Last but not least, Bill, can you chime in on that?
Well, for me, I guess it was, periodic burnout. I would just, throw everything I had into the work I was doing, and just at times, the gas tank would run empty, and I'd have to stop and find a station and refill.
Okay, sounds good. And I've got a follow-up question on that, just really quick. Bill, you run a full website to go along with it, classroomtools.com, and with that, it seems like there's going to be a lot of extras beyond just the content creation. You have to maintain the site as well. And, it's more intense for you, but I feel like a lot of other people have that, where they've got side things. If they've got a blog, sometimes there are issues with the blog, or they have to update the formatting with social media. Sometimes you have to revamp your audience and go back through, clean things out. Does just taking that periodic time out help you approach those kinds of outside problems with a greater degree of freshness?
Yeah, but sometimes I don't wait. One of the biggest problems, I've had this website for 20 years now. I started in 1998. And one of the biggest problems is link rot. I mean, it's really serious. Things change. Sites disappear. People change providers, whatever. And just going through and finding whether links are still live or not is a real time-consuming operation.
And for the bloggers on the panel, have you ever had any problem with that in link rot? Because good blogs include some links and stuff. Have any of you bloggers in the panel had problem with that? And is there a way that you counter that?
educatealexander.com, because I have so many links to so many different tech tools and digital citizenship tools and things like that, that you definitely encounter that it's here one day, it's gone the next. And one way that I counter that is I either do one of two things. Either I go through and click on random links when I can, just to make sure that things are updated and fresh, or you can pay somebody to do it. Tell them, hey, click on every link, make sure everything's still, just send me a list of what's not working. And, that's a way that you can do it too. You don't have to pay them much, but just pay somebody, just kind of go click on your links and see what's working.
Do you have any specific resources, groups that you go to, or is it just sort of like freelancers in your own personal network?
Yeah, it's freelancers in my personal network.
On to the third question, and we'll open it back up to sort of open format. Chime in if you've got something, just to keep things free flowing. Where do you get your inspiration for content? Few people have touched on it already, so if you have, I'd appreciate it if you open things up and expand on it a little bit.
Seems like for me, I love it when I walk into a Lowe's or into a Home Depot or Best Buy, and specifically Lowe's, when I'm purchasing something and they have to actually measure and cut, and it's actually math in action, especially for my students that struggle in geometry. The real world is filled with math every day. So I'm constantly looking for my purpose is integrating math into all of the rest of the contents in the high school environment. So I'm constantly looking for English, constantly looking how math is active in there. So when I'm there and I see that happening, that's when I try to catch a video and I ask somebody, can you explain this to a student? When I see someone working on some plumbing, hey, can you explain this to a student if a student was going to do this? I take real life people that are working in the field and I ask them to just take a minute out to explain to them what they're doing and how they're using math in it. So that's what I mean by I keep my phone active so that I can have some resources for the kids, for my students to connect to.
Totally concur with you here and saying that, like you do it for math, I would do it for tech integration, and having content that allows the educators to gain a plethora of information that they would require to help somewhat ease how they use technology in the classroom and get them a little bit more comfortable with using technology in the classroom. For me, it would be whatever goes around, whatever is happening in the now, and seeing if it's a song that inspires me and the kids are with it, then I'll see how do I allow the educators to integrate that in the curriculum or in their classroom or in their learning, just to keep the students engaged. And it's somewhat similar in the sense that, for me, the integration is more of what's happening in the now, and being sure that whatever information I'm getting with technology is relevant to the learner, relevant to the educators, and it's not mandating in the sense that it makes the task easier to perform, but at the same time, making the learning engaging and fun.
I get a lot of my content ideas from just listening to conversations around me and some of my experiences in school. I take a lot from conversations I have with teachers, and sometimes I actually have to wait in order to post a blog about it, just because it was too recent of something that happened. I don't want anyone to know that I was blogging about them, but I usually go about it that way. And sometimes if something happens where I'm not ready to post a blog yet, I will just start the blog post. I'll put my thoughts in there very quickly, and then save that one for a week where maybe I haven't heard anything. But that's why if you're a regular reader of my blog, I probably give you whiplash sometimes with my topics. It's more because I try to take things that happen to me every day and blog about them in some way.
I found that the best ideas I got were usually from reading, and sometimes not even reading in the discipline. I would read science books or math books or whatever, and I'd come across an idea and think, wow, that would be a really interesting thing to try and get students involved with. And then I have to figure, well, how could I incorporate that into a history class or a government class or an economics class or whatever. And so, and it also helped with burnout, because I'd be reading in areas that I wasn't necessarily, focused intently on. So it, throughout my life, I guess reading has been my go-to.
I'm inspired by the people I follow on Twitter, YouTube videos I watch on YouTube, or some TV shows or whatever, because, season 4 of my podcast is very different from what people have seen previously. So for me, when someone does something, I go, oh, they're talking about how to buy a house. I know somebody on Facebook that's trying to buy a house. Oh, let me talk about that on my show, because I know that, my audience, they're educators, but they're human beings. And so I try to bring a show where I bring topics to them as people, and not necessarily, okay, we're going to talk about this curriculum, which I had done in the past, but season 4 is different. So I'm just inspired about different stories of the human experience. And I try to do a show that way to then bring it to my show to help my audience level up.
I think I would just say that I get my inspiration from my students, first and foremost, their interests. Secondly, from things or experiences that I wish I had had when I was in elementary school, kind of digging back into there. And so I sort of I'm a big picture thinker. I'm more of a visionary. And so getting there is what I sometimes, that's what takes me the most time. And so one of the ways in which I get there is by doing a whole bunch of research to see who's already doing it. And maybe that's somebody on Twitter, maybe that's somebody on Instagram, or maybe it's a website. And then I piece together a lot of different puzzles to kind of get that big vision to come to life in the classroom.
Outstanding. Thank you, everybody. Now, up next, our question number 4. What is one thing that you guys do to make sure that your inspiration gets translated into good content? Because an inspiration is one thing, but usually between the inspiration and the final product, there are problems. There are things that don't, the inspiration doesn't quite work with the resources you have available. So is there something that you guys have found consistently helps you move from inspiration to product?
For me, I would definitely say getting my learners or my end users input, getting them to do the hands-on as well. If I don't know what works for them with their input, then I can't move forward. I need to know what they need, what their interests are. And even if it means getting them to engage in the process with me, it actually helps because now I can see what hurdles they may have to face if the content goes out there. So I would definitely say making it hands-on, getting their input and taking into account their interests while I'm actually getting information put together and getting content put together that they will be using in the classroom or wherever else they'll be using it.
For me, Bill, you're not Bill, you're Seth. Hi, Bill, how you doing? Hi, Dr. Will. For me, one of the things that I've been focusing on this school year has been incorporating 360 and virtual reality. I actually had bought a class set of 360 virtual reality headsets, and I watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and I've actually began to produce 360 word walls and 360 videos where the kids can actually engage on the individual level so that we can address individual learners in their own way. I've used this in a biology class and an algebra 1 class in one of my CTE consumer classes, and it's really just trying something that they would not see in a traditional classroom is one of my most important inspiration. The context that's not the norm. So I don't want to just use something somebody else posted. I want to learn how to do it myself. And if you see on my Twitter, what I have pinned is an actual classroom where I have my students, because I have one class, because I want to experiment on my students. I don't want to experiment on other people's students and not get data for myself. So I have a control data and I have data from teachers who I'm coaching. And my students really do enjoy the new way of seeing mathematics and seeing virtual reality and 360 headsets, and the fact that they have their own set of VR headsets that they can go to their assignment and they know the norms, they know the routines. So I would say it's the context and the content that's very important when dealing with the resources.
Hello, Crystal. I think that my approach was that I never really considered anything finished. Whenever I did something and I used it, then the next year I tinkered with it again, and it always became something different. And each iteration got better and better and better. Then I retired, and I guess they're all finished now. But at least when I was using them, they were never really finished. Each year they I just refined them, and part of it was because I needed to. Students were not the same from year to year. They had different needs, different interests, different whatever, and I had to adapt whatever I'd done before to them. But I think the idea that they're never finished is a good one, because I could come back to it looking at it with fresh eyes, but also with the experience of what I'd done with it in the past.
Oh, I would just say make the investment to pay for stuff. I know we're educators, and we lose our minds because when someone starts charging you for something, because we want the free. But you need to pay for stuff. So if you are going to have a blog, go ahead and pay for your specific URL and pay for some of the widgets and other stuff you want, because there are going to be things that you want to do with that blog that is going to require you to pay for it. And it'll look more professional when it's, such and such.com as opposed to such and such.wordpress or such and such whatever. I started going Zoom, and I paid for Zoom because I was having problems with Google Hangouts because, we know it was free, but I was having these interviews and some of these people were coming on my show and it'd be like, and I'm like, damn, I'm sorry. I'm like, you're messing with my flow right now. This person is dropping gems and they're just fading out. And so I went to pay for Zoom and it took away that. So be willing to invest in paying for sites and resources and get that microphone. I'm not saying you need to go spend, $500 on a microphone. There's some great $60 microphones, but go pay for that microphone and the tools that you need to make sure that you are actually producing a quality product.
I have to just add in that I think that one of the most important things, like you can even in listening to us, you can tell that there's different reasons that people create content, right? And we go from creating content for students to creating content for teachers to creating content for everyone to see. And I think that it's really important that if you're going to do this, that you make sure you know your purpose prior to even beginning. That is the most important thing, because even in different content creation that I have, when I create content for teachers in my job, there's a different purpose for that than there is for my blog, than there is for the podcast, and there is for my book. They all have very different purposes. And if you know your purpose and what you're trying to do, then it's going to make taking that inspiration and putting it into that content a little bit easier. For example, my purpose for my blog is actually not to give other people information. My purpose for my blog is to give me a place to reflect and for me to kind of empty my head of things that I'm thinking and put it down and get it out and make some headspace. So when you know that purpose, moving it from what your inspiration is to what that creation is makes it a little easier.
Stay tuned. Edge of Match will be right back.
If you wanna be somebody, if you wanna go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. It's either now or never to make your dreams come true. You better wake up and pay attention. Hey everybody, it's Dean from Orlando, Florida, coming to you on Monday, April 2nd, 2018. And I am very excited because today is the official release date of my first solo book titled The Why in You. Journey to the Why in You. I'm very excited that this is available on Amazon in Kindle versions and in paperback. There's your back cover right there. I am so excited because when I think about my journey as an educator, it didn't start yesterday. It started even from an early age. And so this book contains anecdotes, stories about the why in me. And so as you read it, as you pick it up, and I encourage you to do so, I challenge you to consider the why in you, the obstacles, right? That were not always positive. They were not always easy. The journey's never easy, but it is worth it. And there is something positive in every negative if you can just see it. I really do believe that. There is something positive in every obstacle that if you could just see it, it will help you to continue going on that journey as an educator, as an administrator, as a teacher. And so we have a job to do. And And so that journey is so important to be embraced. And thank you in advance for checking it out on Amazon. Again, it's the YNU. You can even type my name in on Amazon. It should pop it right up. You can also go to deangainey.com and find it there. You can click directly on the link and it'll take you to Amazon. Again, thanks in advance for checking it out, and have a great day, as well as identify the Y in you.
Now back to more learning on the Edge of Match podcast.
Final question, bonus question suggested by Sarah. And Dr. Will, you touched on it to start with using Zoom. The question is, what's one tool that you use to create content? So, Dr. Will, you touched on Zoom. I would like you to give us a little bit more detail on how you chose that and how it works for you to start us off.
Well, cool. I chose Zoom because I was looking for different video recording programs that would allow me to record. And whether it was Skype or some other things, you'd have to use Audacity or some sort of other tool to go with it. But Zoom has a built-in records system that records video and audio. And so once I end my show, it automatically downloads 2 separate files. So it gives me that video file that I can upload to YouTube, and then it gives me that audio file that I can take to SoundCloud, which then goes to iTunes. So for me, I didn't have to strip video. I didn't have to strip the audio and the video away, which I had to do when I was using Google Hangouts. So it saves me a step. And then there's other technical things that happens that, again, because I'm paying for this service, that I don't have to do, and I don't have to pay for anyone else to actually do those services as well. So it just gave me everything I needed in one spot.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, the rest of you, feel free to chime in. What's one tool that you use that works well for you in creating content?
I really love Weebly for my website creation. I usually tell people, between like Weebly, Wix, Google Sites, but I really love Weebly. I pay for it. I pay for my URL, and I pay for Weebly as a paid website creator. But I really love Weebly. Oh, and I know you said one, but I have to give another one. Fiverr, Fiverr, 2 R's. It's like the secret of my life. It does everything for me. And on Fiverr, you hire people from all over the world to create content. I guess I don't know if it's a content creator or get somebody else to do your content creation, but they create like logos, they create your YouTube banners and all those kind of things. It's like the secret of my entire existence. Thank you.
Google Expeditions. And the reason I chose Google Expeditions right now for my go-to would be getting math learners, especially the math ones, who struggle with grasping abstract content, and to see them engage using Google Expeditions to be more immersive and in the virtual reality world and being able to solve problems like building a house or just doing measurements. It's phenomenal. So I would definitely say any virtual reality, but for me right now, the go-to would be Google Expeditions.
What I've depended on over the years, various Adobe products through the iterations from from Photoshop to Lightroom to Acrobat especially, and I've just depended on those. I can't, I can't imagine what I would have done without them.
I'm loving Flipgrid. Flipgrid is an online tool that students can kind of create or record messages of themselves, almost in like a Snapchat format. So they're able to record conversations with one another and respond to other people in the classroom about a specific topic. And so it's kind of like taking the Socratic seminar process online, and it makes it that much more interesting to students.
I agree with the Flipgrid. It's excellent for making making students explain what they understand for a math question, and then I'll help you. You got to explain what you understand before you can ask the question. But I wanted to say what I do pay for, Dr. Will, is I pay every year and go to stay up to date on all of my Adobe suites because I'm certified in Adobe everything. So I do pay for that and stay current in that. And that's probably the reason why I'm focusing so much on 360, because I do pay for Roundme as well. Well, I paid 1 month because I'm not producing material right now, so I didn't want to pay for a year-round prescription. So Roundme is where it kind of works like PowerPoint, where you hit the dot and it goes to the next slide and you can experience it. So it's the 360 version of PowerPoint. But the Kula has updated to that, and so has ThingLink has updated to that too. But I just really love creating my own stuff. And I love creating in PowerPoint because it's the easiest way to create a picture. So I know there are people out there better than me, but I love to learn. So that's my way of feeding me and feeding my creativity, is constantly trying to make my product for myself.
I'd have to go with both Rochelle and Brian on the chat where they said Cospaces. Cospaces is amazing. I've used it with kids as young as 3rd grade. And all the way up to high school, creating environments that they're studying in science, or they use it to create what they're visualizing in a book as they read. And so Cospaces is phenomenal, especially when you bring them into the piece where they can code stuff and make it move. So I would go with that. And then I would also say Camtasia for some of the video creation has just been a lifesaver for me. It's so easy to use. So I think that those would probably be my 2 favorite, although like total thumbs up for Flipgrid too. Flipgrid's amazing.
I don't believe I've missed anybody, so I believe that wraps it up. Thank you, everybody, for hanging around. It's been a rather long panel, but my gosh, what a lot of good feedback. This has been a real heavy-hitting panel. I appreciate everybody for coming out. Thank you, everybody who tuned in and listened in. I know I will be engaging with some of the Twitter stream after we sign off, and maybe some of our panelists will be good enough to as well. But if not, thank you so much for hanging around. Sarah, is there anything you want to do to close us out?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I just wanted to thank all of you today for just sharing your insight. So thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to our moderator. Thank you to everyone who is tweeting with us, everyone watching and commenting on the YouTube live chat. That was fire tonight as well. So huge shout out to everybody on there. That was amazing. Just wanted to give a couple of announcements before we officially close out. So number one, Brian, who is on YouTube chat right now, his book, The Teacher's Journey, is available for pre-order, so just check that out on Amazon. And Dean Gainey has recently dropped his Journey to the YNU, so that will be so that is also on Amazon. And we also have another educator on panel, Mandy. Her pre-order campaign will be launching a little later this month, so check that out. The Fire Within. So, Mandy, you want to say anything about your book? I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know we didn't prearrange this.
Sure. So my book is it is a bunch of stories put together by teachers who have gone through traumatic experiences, and the pieces that they've pulled out of those experiences that they then use as what we refer to as superpowers to work with their students. And there's also a chapter on how trauma affects the brain, and then another chapter on secondary traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. So we have kind of all that in a part 1 and part 2 of The Fire Within.
So thank you so much for sharing that, and for that book. It's definitely fire, so pardon the pun, but it is that fire. So and also announced today, we have another EduMatcher who will be dropping a book. We have an official release date for Daddy's Favorites by Elissa Frazier. So check that out, coming in July the 23rd. So definitely stay tuned for that. So got more great EduMatch books in the works. So in terms of upcoming shows, we have one tomorrow, 7 p.m. We're going to be talking with Meredith Johnson with Book Camp PD. So tune in for that, same bad time. Actually different bat time, but same bat channel. And next week we are off for Mother's Day, but the following week we will be having a special episode on high performing PLCs with Josue Valles. So check that out. Check it out, podcast.edumatch.org/sign up if you want to be there for that. So everybody have a fantastic evening / afternoon / morning if you're Barbara, and y'all take it easy. So thank you so much again for everything.
Edge match. It's edge match. Edge match. It's edge match. You're at edge match. Edge match. Don't miss edge match. Don't miss